The Gildan Peninsula. The Siberian coast is a hotspot for ancient archaeological finds. But never before have archaeologists found artifacts so far north. The icy terrain is constantly hit with strong, freezing winds, making the territory some of the most treacherous on Earth. As local scientists were examining the area to determine the level of permafrost loss, they stumbled across much more than they bargained for. The Kara Sea. The peninsula makes up 61,776 square miles next to the Kara Sea. The area is covered by permafrost and rarely reaches above -3 degrees Celsius. Although there are no inhabitants in the peninsula, it borders the Yamal Nenets Autonomous District, where nearly 522,904 people live. Melting permafrost. The region's permafrost is melting, and combined with harsh winds, it has created the perfect environment for uncovering artifacts that will shed more light on the ancient people of the nearby regions. Andrei Gusev, the senior researcher at the Archaeology Department of the Center for Arctic Studies, noted that archaeological studies of the area around Lake Parisento and the Urabia River, located beyond the Arctic Circle, have resulted in surprise finds such as a bronze Iranian cup dates to the Middle Ages, 5th to 15th centuries. So what's so special about this bronze cup? Gusev told the Siberian Times, artifacts from this era have been found in West Siberia before, but never so far in the Northeast, let alone in the Arctic. The exact age of the cup will be determined after further studies. Studying these findings will allow scientists to better understand the prehistoric people that live in these areas, including their burial practices, lifestyles, and belief systems. The ancient bronze cup wasn't the only thing they uncovered, either. In fact, archaeologists have found a total of 8 artifacts including more bronze items, as well as pieces made of ceramic and iron, elaborating on the findings. Gusev told Siberian Times it was a random find, that is, there was obviously some camp here, people spent some time at this place and then left. And the cap was left here for some reason, the cultural layer was eroded by wind. And we found the fragment of the cap with the ceramic vessel and the bronze knife handle. Experts say the cap was most likely left there nearly 200 years after it was made. Estimating that was around the 10th or 11th century AD, scientist Arkady Pavlov from Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography in Novosibirsk believes that items like this were brought over by Central Asian merchants in the 6th and 7th century AD and quickly became a part of ceremonial practices by the local people. Although these ancient discoveries are historically important, surprisingly they are not the most interesting to come from the area. In fact, in September 2017, archaeologists found the bodies of 9 children, all of which were buried with lavish headdresses and decorations. The surprise findings weren't a part of known ancient cemeteries, as they were all buried alone and spread out within the banks of the Azovsky Peninsula. Due to the child being dressed and ornamented so lavishly, it's thought that the newest discovery held high ranks. Maybe even the title of prince. He was buried with furs, a headdress, iron knives, iron rings, and freshly roasted venison. According to the Siberian Times, at the time of death, it's estimated that he was between the ages of 3 and 7. The previous year, in the same area among the highest points of the spurs along the Arctic rivers, a young boy around the age of 14 was unearthed. His funeral gown was embroidered with white bronze crosses, among other decorative ornaments, furthering the theory that the children were of high ranks. Although a total of 9 graves were found in the area, only 2 of them have been fully excavated. A working theory is that they will all be children, buried there due to their premature deaths. The theory is based on the fact that they all would have been too young to be fully initiated into their societies, which explains their distant locations, Although unsure, scientists have supporting evidence that gives this theory credit, including the name the locals gave the location. The local Nenates or Samoyeds call the location the Road of Those Who Went to Heaven. The scientists also found evidence of fires, with ash and embers, preserved near the graves. It's believed that it was a ceremonial send-off, cooking meat on the bone to fill the bodies for the afterlife. The bodies were also laid on two large pieces of birch bark sewn together, and the headdresses were impeccably made. The outer layer was fur, while the inner layer was made from a wool fabric. There was even more evidence to suggest the burials were carefully and ceremoniously done. Each grave was given a surrounding moat, which would suggest it was intended to keep them safe from attack. Little is known about the indigenous Sikertia, which the bodies are believed to be a part of. Local Nenates people describe them as small in stature. With light eyes and hair, they fed on primarily fish and whatever they could gather from surrounding forests. But by the 17th century, they had fully assimilated with the Nenat. As if these discoveries weren't interesting enough, scientists have found even more. In the same peninsula that the one-of-a-kind ancient caps were found, scientists also discovered animal bones that sparked some theories about unusual behavior. In September of this year, scientists discovered a staggering 1,300 mammal bones from 13 different species, all found in a central location in the Gideon Peninsula. The bones dated back from 10,000 all the way to 50,000 years ago. What they suggest is rather interesting. The bones of these creatures were mostly adults, although some were babies, suggesting that this was not only a site that these animals would come to in order to give birth, but also once again during their final days. The animals found included the extinct mammoth and cave lion, along with many species of horse, muskox, bison, bear, rabbit, wolves, and reindeer. Among the mammals were also bird bones, suggesting this was a multi-species necropolis, prompting further research. Although the site needs much more excavation, it's known to be the largest singular bone collection in Arctic Eurasia. As further evidence is collected, it's well on its way to becoming the largest in the world. Some of the most important information gathered suggested that many of these animals traveled farther north than previously thought, giving scientists a new perspective on these extinct creatures. Among the experts that discovered the bones was Pavel Kozistov, who suggested that the territory of the cave lion and brown bear in the north of western Siberia between 10,000 and 50,000 years ago have spread about 71 degrees of northern latitude, a fact previously unknown. Even more exciting was the discovery of bones that come from unknown species. Prior to this investigation, the largest collection of mammoth bones from the Russian Arctic was located off the southern shore of Bolshoi-Lyakovsky Island. What is still unknown about this discovery is why these animals chose this specific location to give birth and to die. A working theory is there must have been a source of nutrition such as a salt lick or something similar. These animals aren't the only recent discovery to baffle scientists, either. In 2014, scientists discovered an ancient warlord in the Omsk region of western Siberia, off the bank of the Tara River. This regional warrior was found with only one arm, suggesting it was this final injury that took him to his resting place. The Moscow Times reported that the site has been under excavation for a couple years previous to the actual discovery of the body. The mummy is likely from the 11th century, and his characteristics suggest he was unique for his time. Standing at a height of 5 feet 9 inches, the warrior was extremely tall for his time. He also died at the age of around 40, an older age for most warriors. Artifacts recovered with his body also suggest he was a fierce warrior, including armor, arrows, and a bronze mirror. His injuries add to this theory, as he was discovered with a severed right arm and a crushed shoulder. It's likely that this warrior was killed in battle and carefully buried in a ritual shortly after. Although his arm was severed in the middle, it was wrapped and buried right next to the rest of his body. This suggests that he was given the utmost respect up until his death, Their bows were still sharp when they were discovered, suggesting that they were new when buried, furthering the significance of his life. He was also buried with a mask which included a bear fang above his nose and other ornament. The artifacts suggest he wasn't just any soldier, but one that held high ranks. These findings give scientists a better insight into the political and social norms of society during his lifetime, as well as gives more weight to existing theories that they were independent and highly determined individuals. The Russian newspaper Rossiyskaya Gazeta suggests that he was probably trained as a warrior since childhood. Bred for battle and led a long life of successful combat, these people fought off the Russian Empire until finally joining through negotiation, not force. If you can believe it, we saved the best discovery for last. Nearly 19 years ago, Russian archaeologists uncovered copper-masked mummies in the Ukrainian village of Zeleny Yar. It took them nearly 15 years to even begin unraveling the mysteries behind these curious burials. In 2002, scientists had to put a pause on their excavations due to objections by the locals of the Yamal Peninsula. When they were finally able to resume in 2014, they realized the significance of their findings. 34 graves were discovered, and 11 bodies were found in shallow pits only 34 kilometers from the Arctic Circle. Some were covered from head to toe in copper, but why? Good question. 5 of the 11 mummies were covered from head to toe in copper plating, and were also covered in numerous furs from reindeer, beaver, wolverine to even bear. The extent of the significance of this ornament is unknown, although due to such lavish covering it's safe to say they held some political or social significance within the ancient societies. Zeleny Yar is believed to be an ancient crossroad where many people used to trade goods during medieval times. Oddly enough, all of the bodies found had shattered skulls, as if someone purposefully smashed them. Natalia Fyodorova of the Ural branch of the Russian Academy of Sciences believes the skull smashing was a superstitious act to render protection from mysterious spell believed to emanate from the deceased. While to modern people this might sound harsh, experts have witnessed such things in Bulgaria, where stakes were driven through the heart of the deceased to prevent them from turning into vampires. Among the 11 mummies were 7 adults and 4 children, only one of which was a female. All of the children were masked in copper and bound by copper hoops. Although scientists are unsure of why most of the corpses were male, they do know that the purpose wasn't to mummify the remains. The mummification happened by accident caused by the protection of the copper. Among the bodies were other ancient artifacts including an iron knife, silver medallions, a bronze bird figurine, and a Persian bowl that dates back to the 10th century. Among the ancient artifacts were also decorative pieces, including belt buckles, bracelets, and earrings made of silver. Alexander Pilipenko from the Institute of Cytology and Genetics is currently testing the genetics of the mummies to better understand where they came from and what kind of life they might have lived. It turns out a couple of years later scientists found another mummy, this time it was a female. As scientists continued the excavation of Zeleny Yar, they found the woman we know today as the Polar Princess. She was discovered alongside the men and children. With her hair and eyelashes almost perfectly intact, her existence in the area proved the theory that this was a necropolis for males were incorrect. Although they still don't understand the significance of her social standing, she was around the age of 35 at her death. And although her face was perfectly intact due to copper face mask, her body was not, as it was only cocooned in birch bark.